I'm Andreas Enfeldt from dietdoctor.com, and I'm here with someone who's made it his life's mission to improve the lives and health of 10 million people. Mark Sisson. He's a very popular blogger and one of the leaders of the Paleo movement. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, Andreas. Yeah.
So 10 million people, improving the health of 10 million people. That's
well, that was my
quite a goal.
That was quite a goal, and that was my original mission statement. And now I fear that I underestimated, because I think we're getting, as a movement, we're closing in on that number fairly rapidly. We're not there yet, but we're closing in on it. So maybe I should have added the zero to that and made it 100 million.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
Maybe. So how did you get into this whole thing?
Well, like I think a lot of people in this movement, my personal background included health issues. And even though I was a top-ranked endurance athlete, I did Ironman, I did some pretty fast marathons in my day, the training and the diet that was sort of implicit in the kind of training I was doing was causing all kinds of issues. So I was, in some respects, I was the poster child for what fitness is because of my conditioning, but I was also a wreck on the inside. I was really falling apart. I had osteoarthritis in my feet. I had chronic tendonitis that I couldn't seem to shake. I had irritable bowel syndrome, upper respiratory tract infections all the time. So it was crazy. And when my career ended as a result of some injuries, many of which accumulated, I think, in retrospect, as a result of the pro-inflammatory diet that I was taking on. When my career ended, I just sort of had a sit-down assessment and went, what is going on here? I entered this whole fitness and health realm to be healthy and to be fit, yes, but also to be healthy. And I was getting exact opposite in terms of my results. So I looked at what was it going to take to be lean and fit and happy and healthy and strong and all those things we want with the least amount of pain and suffering and sacrifice possible. And that really was what got me started on this evolution, if you will, toward the Primal Blueprint, which was my life way, my structuring of a guideline for myself and my friends, and ultimately millions of friends, on how to achieve all these things in a way that optimizes gene expression and allows us to go about the rest of our lives with a sense of fulfillment and gratitude and ease and grace.
And that's great. And everyone can go to your website, marksdailyapple.com, and keep updated on that.
And that was, so having arrived at that life way for myself, I started to think about ways in which I could get the information to other people. And I used to be involved in television a little bit, and when that sort of fell apart, I thought, well, this whole blogging thing looks like it's exciting, I'll try that. Wow, little did I know how much work that was going to be. But I did wind up starting Mark's Daily Apple in 2006, and it has grown almost exponentially, but certainly linearly since then to become...
It's huge.
It's huge. It really is. It's the top blog in that space right now. And it's based on creating what I think is compelling content on a daily basis.
And you do?
Yeah.
How do you have time for all that?
Well, I don't. Right now it's a question of having organized my life around a staff that, so I have a back-end developer who's making sure that all of the plugins on the site work and everything plays nicely. I've got a front-end designer. I've got a managing editor of the blog. I have research staff that's always providing me with the kind of information that I need to plan weeks and sometimes months in advance of what I'm going to write. I have Jennifer Meyer, who's my chef, so she writes something on Saturdays, and on Sundays we do Weekend Link Love, and Mondays is Dear Mark. So it's become kind of there's a regular schedule that we adhere to now that seems to work very well. And the most important and popular one is Fridays, which are success stories, and that's where people submit these tremendous testimonials about the results they've had in going primal.
And you have loads of those. I mean, not 10 million yet, but it's getting there.
No,
right?
but we have thousands of testimonials. I mean, it's sort of the irony is that the space that we're in, which is very subject to the scrutiny of outside scientists, when we talk about a high-fat, low-carb eating strategy or that you'll get better results from exercising less, it really does knock up against conventional wisdom. And so a lot of the scientific community will go, well, where are your published studies? And we can certainly give them the published studies that trickle down over time. But my basic response is, wait a minute, I have thousands of testimonials that are this long about every detail that these people did to lose 50 pounds or 75 pounds, or to get rid of their polycystic ovarian syndrome, or to get off their diabetes meds. And you're going to question those testimonials and put up against those some mass food frequency questionnaire that you did or that you read about a few years ago where people tried to recall what they ate 6 days ago. It doesn't, at some point, I think the testimonials sort of trump the studies that are currently continue to promote somehow a low-fat diet,
Now, as long as it's only weak observational
right.
correlations,
Yeah.
I would agree, basically.
Yeah.
But something else that I find interesting, you mentioned low-carb, high-fat eating, and your Primal Blueprint version of Paleo is sort of on the low-carb side, but this is kind of controversial today on Paleo blogs. Some people are claiming that you need to eat a lot of starch and that insulin has nothing to do with obesity.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, having done this for as long as I have, and having again not only seen the testimonials but I spend most of my day doing research and reading about this, I become more and more convinced that we are obligate fat burners, that we are supposed to be burning fat for most of our existence, that the less glucose that we burn in a lifetime, probably the better off we are, so that I still adhere to I created a little graph, a chart years ago, the Primal Blueprint carbohydrate curve, which is basically 0 to 150 grams a day. And I still contend that pretty much nobody but very hardworking day laborers and elite athletes need much more than 150 grams of carbs in a day to not only survive but to thrive. There are people who will survive and do well on 200 grams or 300 grams a day. But for the most part, when you look at the population of the United States and now around the rest of the world, you see that when the daily intake of carbs in general tends to exceed 250 grams a day, we start to see a collection of problems, of metabolic problems. So I'm still convinced that reducing our carbohydrate load is a good thing, and that improving our ability to burn fats and occasionally go into ketosis is also a good thing. Now, again, having said that, I created this Primal Blueprint as a way of inviting the greatest number of people to participate and to play. So I try not to be exclusionary. What I mean by that is where some paleo adherents will say, well, you've got to go full paleo or it's nothing. You got to cut out everything and you can't do this and you can't do that. I'm trying to say, do the best you can. We have an 80-20 rule. You strive for 100% compliance, but if you only hit 80%, you're still going to get very close to your goals. We allow a little bit of red wine and some chocolate, and there's these. We say if you've fallen off the wagon, certainly dairy is a component of that. We say if you're not lactose intolerant, there's a spectrum of dairy that you could probably enjoy as part of your routine, including
such as
cream and butter for starters, and ghee. Some of the fermented dairies, full-fat yogurt, some of the artisanal cheeses, and a lot of people have said that was the swing vote for them. That was the thing that allowed them to go, I can do this. I'm going to have to give up my grains, and I'm still pretty adamant on giving up grains. That's the one thing that I will stand firm on. That giving up grains is probably a good thing for just about everybody. The fact that you can survive on grains doesn't mean you can thrive on grains, and I'm a perfect example of that. I continued to incorporate grains into my own personal diet until probably 10 years ago, thinking that I was one of those lucky people who could eat grains and not have any issues with them. And I did a lot of research on grains going back 20 years ago, and I read a lot of the stuff that you read now about lectins and phytates and saponins and gliadins and all of these anti-nutrients. I read about them, and I can eat grains because I don't seem to manifest any issues. Well, it wasn't until I gave up grains as part of my own personal 30-day test, and my arthritis that I had in my hands went away, and my irritable bowel syndrome that I'd lived with my whole life disappeared. I stopped getting sinus infections. It was crazy. And so I got that, look, if I'm a person who's defending my right to eat grains in the face of all that I knew at the time, and then I see what happens when I give it up, imagine how many millions, hundreds of millions of people are surviving on grains, but may have some subclinical issues that may not manifest themselves in tremendous pain or suffering today, but certainly over time will have a deleterious problem. So it's a long-winded explanation of why I'm still pretty adamant about the grain thing. But having given that up, I say, okay, a little bit of dairy, a little bit of wine and chocolate and whatever to make life that much more pleasant.
Livable.
Livable, exactly.
How about sugar?
Sugar's another example of something that I'm not so adamant on sugar by itself. It's the accumulation of sugar. It's sort of a dose and context thing. That in the context of sweetening up a cup of coffee with 1 teaspoon of sugar, you're probably better off using table sugar than you are putting agave into a cup of tea. So I'm not tremendously down on sugar per se in the context of keeping that total sugar load or glucose load over a day in the range that works best for you. If you're trying to lose weight, fruit is probably not your friend for this period of time. If you're trying to lose weight, I would say that's probably a time when you want to wean yourself off of any kind of sweeteners, including artificial sweeteners or no-calorie sweeteners, for the simple fact that the brain is always seeking glucose if you're a sugar-burning individual. And if the brain senses anything sweet and hasn't gotten the calories to accompany it, there's a tendency to overeat. So there are reasons to kind of cut sugar out of your diet. But if you've become good at burning fat, if you want to figure out a way in which to incorporate some of these modern convenient. By the way, table sugar as we know it goes by another name. It's evaporated cane juice. So you can argue that table sugar is sort of paleo in some regards in small amounts.
It's fruit, huh?
Well, it's not even. Yeah, exactly. It's
one of the 5
sap.
servings.
It's sap. Yeah, it's one of the 5 servings. So it's not a big issue for me in small doses. It's the context, and when you start taking in large amounts of sugar in sodas and other sweet treats and lots of candy, and that's where this becomes a huge issue for a large segment of the population.
And lots of people in America and in the world, they have problems with the weight, pre-diabetes or full-blown diabetes. Should they all go ketogenic? Very, very strict low carb? Or
my take on that is that certainly that's a viable option for a lot of those people, is to go full-blown ketogenic. But I think in many cases that's probably a progression, and it starts with just eliminating the major offenders, which are the sugars in large quantity. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not advocating large intakes of sugar or even moderate intakes of sugar. I'm just saying I'm not so picky to say, oh, you had a teaspoon of sugar in your coffee, you don't belong to the Paleo Club anymore. You're out. What I'm saying is that so many people would benefit by eliminating the drinks that they consume that are full of sugar on a regular basis, and the desserts and all of the treats, by eliminating certainly the industrial seed oils, so the high omega-6 laden oils and the hydrogenated oils that may be causing some additional burden on metabolic systems, and getting rid of trans fats and things like that, and then getting rid of grains, because I think the grains are problematic, not just because of the anti-nutrient components that certainly are problematic for a lot of people, but also because they just provide a tremendous insulin load or a carbohydrate load that raises insulin. Getting rid of those 3 things is sufficient for a lot of people to realize more normalized energy levels and blood sugar levels and stabilization. Now, if you're a person who's had a lot of years of bad habits And here I am assigning a value. There are no right or wrong choices here, but I'm going to say, for the context of this interview, there are some habits that are not necessarily enhancing your genetic expression, shall we say. And if people have had 20 or 30 or 40 years of doing that, they've done a serious amount of metabolic damage. It may take some extra effort to recapture an appropriate metabolism. And in those regards, I think maybe going on a occasional ketogenic program could be very beneficial to a lot of those people. It takes an extra measure of effort to get to that level, but I think in most cases it's worth it. I see ketosis as being a very legitimate way of accessing energy, a very legitimate way of taking the hardwiring, the genetic wiring that we have, which sort of anticipates that the brain will want to use ketone bodies, that the cardiac muscle will thrive on it, that that the brain ultimately probably wants to reduce its glucose load. We have all that metabolic programming there if we decide to go down that pathway. The issue is that we don't always build the machinery. So it takes a while to build the machinery to be able to access ketones in a way that's effective and functional and tremendously lowers glucose. And until you can build that metabolic machinery, you probably still need some amount of glucose to just to be sane, throughout the day and make life livable. Does that make sense?
Okay, so what kind of time are we talking about to build the machinery?
Well, I have a program called the 21-Day Total Body Transformation. And for people who've not had a lot of metabolic damage, it probably only takes 21 days to upregulate the genes that are really involved in effective and efficient fat metabolism, and kind of downregulate the gene systems that are involved in or requiring a regular input of carbohydrate. That's a fairly short-term transition. But there are stages, and when you get to that stage, I think you can do very well on 50 to 100 grams of carbs a day for the rest of your life, and maybe some people 30 to 70, and that's a nice space to be in, because what that does is that allows you then to have access to some of the foods that make life worth living, just like vegetables and things that you otherwise, if you're very low carb, you tend to not be in a position to even eat a lot of vegetables, and it's not because they're harmful or they're not good for you. It's because vegetables just in many cases taste great. And I just want to add that to my, again, I'm here not to on a bet with you to see how long I can live versus you. I'm here to enjoy life. Enjoying life means not just being fit and lean and strong and happy and healthy and productive. It also means enjoying my every meal. Every meal I want to have be something that I look forward to, and not that I'm going to go, all right, I'm going to eat this because it's good for me. So vegetables become part of that. So there's a very legitimate reason, and I can explain all the biochemistry behind why a very low carb living strategy is a legitimate way to live your life, regardless of whether you're severely overweight or whether you're an athlete. I can make a case for being an endurance athlete and being a very low a ketogenic athlete. That technology exists. That might now take months to really get into that deep, what we might call deep ketosis, where you're so good at accessing ketones and you've built the metabolic machinery and you really only need 20 or 30 grams of glucose in an entire day, almost all of which comes from either the glycerol off a triglyceride or from some minor amount of gluconeogenesis, which has no negative impact on muscle mass.
Right. So, putting aside the thing about enjoying all kinds of varieties of food, do you see any dangers in going very strict low carb for a long time? This is a controversial subject.
It is controversial, and as of now, I don't see any dangers. That's not to suggest that there aren't any dangers, but I think as of now I don't see any dangers doing that. I think probably an appropriate strategy for people who really want to go there is to cycle in and out. So this is maybe spending weeks or months totally in ketosis and then coming out for a couple of weeks. And it doesn't mean going up to 300 grams of carbs a day. It simply means getting into that 100 to 150 gram per day range, which you will sort of land in automatically just by adding vegetables, copious amounts of vegetables, and a little bit of fruit into your diet. There's no reason, and or a yam here or there. Some of what we call, I don't call them, but the industry now calls them safe starches.
So, what's your idea about safe starches? That's also
yeah. I mean, I think that the recent work on acellular carbohydrates is a very interesting concept, and the idea that carbohydrates that are derived from processed sources and are much more readily digested and absorbable probably negatively impact us more than those that are bound up in cells, and where the digestive process does have to go through cell walls to access these kinds of carbohydrates. So I think the notion that safe starches would be the next level of carbohydrate loading, if you will, for athletes who still consider themselves carbohydrate burning machines, who have become fairly good at burning fat, but they're not in that low carb ketogenic athlete stage that I sort of envision we might be the next realm of athletic performance. We can talk a little bit about that, but for now, most athletes who are paleo are doing so at what I call an appropriate carbohydrate level. So they're not just ad libitum consuming carbohydrates because that's so good for their energy levels, and they're topping off glycogen stores every day without paying any attention to the upper limits. Instead, these athletes are now recognizing that the body really can't store that much glycogen on a daily basis. You can deplete it and you can restore it, but it doesn't take 1,000 grams a day like I consumed throughout my career. 1,000 grams of carbohydrates every day.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's only that's only 4,000 calories of a 5,000 calorie a day intake.
How many plates of pasta?
That's a lot. That's a lot of That's a lot of loaves of bread. That's a lot of bowls of cereal. That's a lot of 6 packs of beer, which was always part of the carbo loading strategy when I was a runner in the 70s and early 80s. So if you want to take in that amount of carbohydrate, it's not difficult, particularly if you're running 20 to 25 miles a day or riding 100 miles a day as part of your training. So and yet that wasn't necessary, because I was lucky that I was burning off all of this extra energy, but it was probably creating all of the reactive oxygen species, because at some point I was exceeding the appropriate amount of carbs I should have been taking in. Again, thinking that I had carte blanche because I wasn't gaining weight, thinking I had carte blanche to take in all these calories. So now today's really well-planned paleo athletes are using what we call an appropriate carb strategy. So they figure out what exactly they need in the way of carbs. They don't exceed it. And for those carbs, they're not taking in loaves of bread and plates of pasta or gallons of beer. They're taking in yams and other forms of safe starches, maybe some white rice, maybe even white potato. But they're taking in just a measured amount of these safe starches.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
To me too. Just out of curiosity, how many grams of carbs for Mark Sisson today?
Right these days, I'm right around 100 grams a day, and that's only because if I add up the teaspoon of sugar in my coffee, and if I add up I know, or the piece of chocolate that I have later in the evening. Those little things add up to, but if I took those away, I'd probably be at 70 grams. I'm really almost stunned at how little food I need to eat to maintain energy and body mass and everything that I need to go through a day. That's really one of the great revelations that I've encountered, is this notion that when people talk about the sustainability of paleo, one of the things they don't factor in is that most people who are on a paleo or primal blueprint eating strategy don't need that many calories now, because so much of it's coming from quality sources of food, that I'm finding that there are days when I can get by on 1,800 calories and other days 2,400. I don't think I ever exceed 3,000 calories in a day, and for the first 40 years of my life, I probably never got less than 3,000 calories a day. It's a reorienting of your metabolism to be more efficient. And this is one of the ironies, again, of this whole weight loss industry, is that there's an assumption that we want the metabolism to be inefficient, and we want it to be wasting calories all the time. And that we do want that to happen if we're trying to lose stored body fat. But at some point, if we reduce our metabolism, if we lower, for instance, our thyroid a little bit, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. By lowering metabolism, every animal that has a low T3 tends to live longer. It's so I'm not talking about severe clinical hypothyroidism, but lowering T3 a little bit is not a bad thing. By lowering your metabolism, you're able to get through the day on fewer calories. You're not as hungry as often, and all of these things that I think are great. Still people question, wait a minute, you're not hungry, isn't that a bad thing? Aren't you supposed to be hungry all the time? No, you're not supposed to be. You're supposed to get whatever fuel you need to get through the day, and hopefully enjoy that intake of fuel while you're consuming it, and then not worry about it for the next 3 hours.
So that's one of the reasons why paleo could be good for the environment. People don't need to eat much if their weight is good. And
we could trim 30% of the caloric intake off of most of certainly the United States, skim it right off the top, and not need it in the form of calories. So when you're doing all of the huge mega math and all of the equations about, well, where are we going to get all the grass-fed beef and the line-caught fish and all this other stuff? Well, first of all, you don't need that much protein. That's another revelation that I've had over the past few years. I used to be a big high-protein guy, but my high-protein directives were sort of based on a concept of gluconeogenesis. But when you realize that you become a good fat burner and you become good at accessing ketones, even when you're not really in a very low-carb stage, you're still making ketones, and you unburden the body of making glucose, you don't need gluconeogenesis that much. So you don't even need to take in significant quantities of protein to fuel the gluconeogenesis thing, and it doesn't take that much protein to maintain body mass and energy levels on a daily basis. So we don't need that much protein. If we were magically to convert the entire world to paleo, we wouldn't need that much protein. We wouldn't need that many calories. Certainly, we wouldn't need to grow all of the legumes that are then either fermented or fed to livestock. So there are a lot of things that, in fact, I'm anxious to. There's at this symposium that we're at today. I'm anxious to hear Joel Salatin's concepts on that.
Yeah, but you mentioned 30% less calories for Americans.
Yeah.
What is that going to do to the economy and food industry? That would be.
Yeah, well, this is an issue.
For them.
I mean, look, you're a doctor. What if I told you that if I could snap my fingers and change the way everybody in this country ate, that I could reduce hospital admissions and doctor visits
out of a job
by 50% within 2 years? You'd be out of a job, and that would tank the economy too, I guess. But I mean, it's like, okay, what are you interested in? I'm looking at this. I don't look at this so much from a global perspective, and that may be selfish of me, but right now I look at this first of all for myself and then for my family. So how do I get the best results for myself and my family? Certainly, paying attention to the economy and the world, but really I'm not going to give up my family's health because I think the world would be a better place if I sacrifice my own health or my family's health. I'm not going to do that. And I think that's very primal and very paleo as well.
And very human.
And very human, yeah.
So, speaking of human, you're obviously a very busy guy with your blog and your books and everything. I was just kind of curious, and you're very fit, and you emphasize the importance of play.
Yes.
What's a typical day look like for Mark Sisson?
Well, when I'm home, which is I try to be home as much. I try not to travel as much these days because travel is just it's not exciting to me anymore, and it's sort of devastating to your general physiology. I get up around 6:30, have a big cup of coffee, read the paper, do a couple of puzzles because I'm always trying to get my brain off to a good start. Hit my computer with emails and writing. I'll usually finish up a post or put the final edits on a post that I did the day before because I want to have some time for it to digest and give it a final pass. I'll take a break around 10 or 10:30 and either go to the gym, go for a hike, or go for a paddle in the summertime. Did that 2 days ago, went for a nice paddle in the middle of the day. Come back, start writing, hit the computer with, and answer emails. This is one of the benefits and distractions of the business I'm in, is that I'm in a space that looks to minimize electronic interactions, and yet I have to do that to do what I do. So there's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there for me. But then I'll work through the afternoon, so I get most of my work done in the afternoon. Usually 2:30, I'll take a break. I have a pool, unheated pool in my house, so I'll take a break and I'll take a plunge in the pool, try and cool off a little bit, try to bring, and again in the wintertime it'll be 50, 53 degrees or 54 degrees. In the summer it's not that bad, it's 70s. But then I'll air dry in the sun, so I get my cold plunge and then a little bit of sun to my vitamin D is part of my strategy. Go back to work. So I'm always back and forth, up and down from my computer. First time I eat, because I didn't talk about eating yet, usually I make a shake, a meal replacement called Primal Fuel, which is a high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb shake. So I'll usually start with one of those at 10:30 in the morning. So I won't eat anything until 10:30. Some days I skip that entirely and I don't eat until my first meal, which would be lunch, which is almost always a big-ass salad, a giant salad with some form of protein on it. In the late in the afternoon, I might have a handful of macadamia nuts. Again, I usually work until about 7 o'clock at night, and at 7 I finish, and I'll have a glass of red wine sometimes not, but mostly I do. And then dinner is usually some kind. I found a great source of bison, so I have bison ribeyes and bison steaks and all of this. So some form of grilled meat or fish, and some form of vegetables for dinner, and maybe a little bit of cheese, and might finish it off with a little bit of a little piece of chocolate before the day closes out, and that's it. And I usually go to bed around 10:30 or 11, and get up and do it all over again the next day.
Sounds very nice.
Yeah.
And you live in California?
I live in Malibu, so I live in a pretty magical place. So particularly in the summertime, it's very enticing to be outside. Days that I don't go to the gym, I'll go for a hike, and I've got great hikes that are very close to my house, so I can be on the trails and back at my office within an hour and 15 minutes, or maybe 2 hours at the most, and still have a great workout out of it. And again, I don't treat that as a workout, I treat that as play. So for me, I only go for a hike if I go, wow, it's a great day, I got to get out. I don't go, oh geez, it's Wednesday, I got to go for a hike today because my schedule says that. So I try to be spontaneous about a lot of my training. The training I do in the gym is very rigid and very focused, but I only do it twice a week. So I'm trying to get in and out of the gym, doing some full body weight routines, lots of push-ups, pull-ups, dips, lunges, squats, things like that can get me in and out, that are contemplated to help me avoid injury, because I like to play and I don't want to play injured. So most of my training in the gym is done so that I can play more effectively.
So what's your favorite play?
Well, my favorite play is every Sunday we have an ultimate frisbee game. So we play this 2-hour, very heated game of ultimate. And have you played ultimate?
Never.
Okay, it's one of the greatest games ever invented. And everybody that I bring in, that I invite to play with us, including NBA players and movie stars and whoever we sort of can get into our circle in Malibu, they'll go, wow, this is like the most fun I ever had. But they'll also go, on Tuesday, they'll go, well, I couldn't go to work on Monday because I was so sore from all of the sprinting I did playing Ultimate with you guys. So it's a really, for me, it's all about fun, but it winds up being probably my hardest workout of the week as well.
It's a good combination.
It's a great combination. It's what you look for. You try to find ways in which you are getting a great workout and not realizing it at the time.
So this primal lifestyle doesn't sound so bad, huh?
Never sounded anything but great to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just to finish off, what do you think about the future of the paleo movement? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about what we're doing, and I'm excited that we keep bringing more people into this space. I still think that this is always going to be a grassroots movement, a bottom-up movement where one person tells another person about their success and how they achieved it. I see that there are more bloggers, there are more podcasts, there are more books being written, more cookbooks being written. That's all helping to bring new peripheral people in. And I see that I don't ever see it being part of a public policy because for many of the reasons that you talk about, the fact that imagine if the U.S. government said, "Oops, we made a mistake. Not only should you not eat 6 to 11 servings of grains a day, you probably shouldn't eat many at all." That would just upend the economy. So that's not going to happen, I think, in my lifetime. But I do see a powerful movement in which people see how they can take back control of their own health. And they're not beholden to their doctor or to the medical system or to their insurance company or to their government policy. That's a very powerful realization when you realize that this thing that you feared, because most people, if you ask them, particularly if they have a family history of disease, they fear getting sick. This is the one thing that hangs over their head. And what I see are people realizing, wow, that not only have I gotten off all my meds at the age of 50, not only have I lost this weight and have more energy, but now I see that I can actually improve my health starting at the age of 50 for the next couple of decades. So I don't have to be worried about this downhill slippery slope. In fact, I can improve my strength, I can improve my health, I can improve my productivity and all these things. It's a very exciting and empowering kind of feeling. And that's really the real strength of this movement. When you take that and you apply it to your health, and then you see, wow, I can apply that to how I work, and I can apply that to how I treat my family, and how we live our lives in terms of our concept of affluence and our concept of success and fulfillment. That's really where the next level of realization will happen here, and it's very exciting to me.
Yeah, and not only could people improve their own health, they could inspire their friends and family.
Yeah,
well.
Exactly. So that's this grassroots aspect of this. They can inspire their family, and now we see so many people who come to Mark's Daily Apple, my site, having been having seen the success of somebody that they know, but now the person that had the success says, "Look, we got to, the best thing for you to do is just go here and read these 3 links, and you'll get it. I can't even." It's so magical I can't even explain it. Because if I tell you that I did this because I'm exercising less and I'm eating more and I'm eating more fat and bacon, you'll never believe me. So go read this particular couple of links at Mark's Daily Apple. So that's how a lot of people come to our site. The only other, maybe the next level of success will come from either doctors who are able to wrest the control away from their own allegiance to insurance companies and to the standard of care that they've been accustomed to, and be able to start to do some more work in the arena of diet counseling as opposed to prescribing drugs. That's another level of, I think, leverage. And finally, if we can get into the corporate world and show large corporations that if they can get their employees to adopt this, and their employees now have greater productivity and fewer sick days, and have a reduction if they're covering insurance for them, having a reduction in their insurance issues. If you can show a corporation that by investing $1 million in this program that you can get a $5 million return annually, there's some great leverage there as well.
That's going to take a while, right?
And that's going to take one
bit too controversial.
One company that's willing to step up to the plate and say, we're going to do this. And I think, if you can document that experience, you'll see that there will be other companies who will go, well, I think this makes good sense.
But maybe that's something for the future. But the people watching this video, and they're interested, they can go to your site, marksdailyapple.com, and you have start here.
Yeah, we have lots of start here, exactly. Yeah, read this first, and
so you can start there. Or if they want an easily packaged thing, they could get your Primal Blueprint book, or do you have several books?
Yeah. So now we have
which ones should?
Yeah, well, we have the Primal Blueprint, which is the original book, and that really does document and tell. It explains the whole strategy. Then we did the Primal Blueprint 21-day total body transformation, which was sort of originally for people who read the book and got it and then said, okay, I get it, I understand it, but now what do I do? So the 21-day program takes every step. Here's what you do day 1, here's what you do day 2, here's how you document it, here's what's going on, and here's why it works. In very simple, we have 8 key concepts that if you can understand these key concepts, one of which, for instance, is you don't have to exercise a lot to have an effective weight loss strategy, and people just don't seem to get that, so we explain why that is. So yeah, 21-day total body transformation. Then we've got the most recent one. I mean, I've got 2 cookbooks that are very popular, and then we just came out with the 90-day journal, which is a very, very detailed logbook, so you can do your own personal experiment. You may say, well, I want to try and maybe reintroduce legumes back into my diet. How is that going to work? Well, you can record your data and see how that experiment works. Because there's been through the past couple of years, this N=1 kind of concept where everybody's an experiment of one. And while I say everybody's metabolism works pretty much the same way, you may have transitioned your own metabolism down a pathway because of the signals you were giving it through inappropriate dietary choices that makes you put you in a position that maybe by tweaking a few variables now, you can reclaim some of that. But you have to know what those variables are. You know, is it going very low carb, or is just cutting back sugars and grains enough? So this logbook is there to kind of walk you through that strategy and set up your own personal experiment.
Right, so there's several options, but just the simplest one is to go to marksdailyapple.com and click on the Start Here.
Exactly,
It's
exactly, yeah.
free, and you got loads of information.
Right.
So thanks so much for the interview.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always a pleasure.